YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for the series finale of Kamen Rider Saber. Now, there is one more episode left, but this is for all intents and purposes the last episode in the main story, so it's effectively the finale episode. Next week's kind of more of an epilogue, tee-up of Revice type of deal, which I'll talk about at the very end. But this is basically the main end of the story. And I did think it was a good end. I thought it was a very enjoyable episode, and predictable but good ending. I only have really one major problem with it, but for the most part I enjoyed it. Now, I don't think this episode was as good as the last few weeks. It was still pretty good, but I think because it was so predictable, it just didn't come off as good to me, but I still thought it was pretty good. Alright, that's it guys. No, I'm just kidding. So, basically we continue where we left off. Kenzan and Espada finish off their guy. They've taken like 15 episodes to finish their guy. Everyone else finished him like 5 minutes ago. But they finish him, and then Yuri does like a weird force healing thing from them, because it seemed like Ren dies, which I'm like, oh, okay. No, but Philip has. Oh, okay. He heals him or something. And then last week I forgot to mention that Toma got yeeted off into this like space, kind of like that battle royale on that sky place in Game of Thrones. I forget it, but Tyrion had the guy do a battle royale for him, and then there was like a giant hole to the sky. That's what it reminded me of. I can't remember everyone's names. Too many characters, too many shows. Anyway, Game of Thrones. So what did you guys think of the ending? It's been a while now. Anyway, so he got yeeted off of there, but then he gets pulled up by the Primitive Dragon book. This was kind of a nice moment, because I didn't expect that. The Primitive Dragon book is there, and the little kid dragon thing saves them. I still wish it was just a baby dragon and not an annoying little kid, but it was kind of a nice moment, and he transforms into Primitive Dragon and fights Storius. I liked that just because it was kind of unexpected, and I mentioned in my catch-up review how I liked the Primitive Dragon form, but whether or not I liked it, it felt like it got shoved to the side so we could make room for Elemental Dragon, and it's kind of like, why does this exist? So I thought that was a nice little surprise, but Toma ends up getting overwhelmed anyway, but then Luna and Kento and Ryoma show up, and then Luna like starts to disappear and becomes a gateway to sort of allocate all the powers of the swords. Sort of like his final form is, but it allows him to have this other book, which for a split second I thought, are we getting a final form? I'm like, oh no, there's going to be a debate about what the final form is. But it really is just a book that allows them to harness all the powers at once of the Ride books. And they transform into the 3 base forms, which was kind of nice. Again, because I mentioned 1 or 2 weeks ago when we did like the full-on henshin of everybody, how Saber's base form and kind of Ryoma's too haven't been seen since their power-ups, more so than a lot of other series, but we get to use their base forms, and they have a pretty cool fight where they get to utilize all the powers of the various books, even ones like the auxiliary books, which have not been seen since episode like 7. So it made for a pretty cool final fight, and they defeat Storius, and he kind of has one last flashback to when he used to tell stories, and you know, they do all their preaching about like, we can make our own stories and stuff. And while that's going on, the world and Wonder World and people are slowly disappearing as What's-Her-Face, yeah, good old What's-Her-Face, is typing up that basically email that's going to save the world. It says, don't forget to remember your own stories. And then at the end, Toma's disappearing too. And I feel things are a little bit muddled and confusing. I think I get it. Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5? I think I'm getting you. I think I understand it, but I feel it was just a little bit muddled because it seemed like everything disappeared. But I think the gist of it is, because Toma winds up in, like, the empty, and Castiel's there, and he's like, at least I don't look like a lumberjack. No. But he ends up in, like, the empty, but then you see all these people's stories flooding in. It starts out with kids, and then goes to adults and kids. And it looks like they were actual fan submissions, I'm gonna assume. You know, it could have just been filmed from random, like, B-list actors or C-list actors or whatever, but it seemed like one of those things where they asked people to send in videos of their favorite stories. But I think the gist of it is that the stories that people hold on to and remember saved the world, in addition to Toma being able to create a new story. So Storius was right in that the tome told the end of this world, but the stories that people held on to and Toma's ability to create new stories essentially revived the world and created a new world. That's kind of the way I saw it. Big Bang 2, it was the Pandorica opens all over again, I guess, in a way. That's the way I saw it, and I think it fits, and I'll do a little monologue at the end kind of about my thoughts on that. But I thought it was very cliche, but nice and fitting for the story. Then we do a bit of a time jump, and it seems like, yeah, the world's fixed, but there's still some disappeared people. Like, man, what a time for Thanos to attack, right when they're having the Saber finale. But there's kind of a nice moment of, oh man, what is her name? I gotta look this up. May, there we go. She was along those characters where I'm like, there's so many characters to remember, you're filed in the don't care about your name area. But May is kind of having a sort of memorial to Toma about his last book and says, like, I hope he's creating a story somewhere. It was kind of a nice moment. And then while that's happening, you can see clearly Toma's, like, somewhere writing a story. And then it's clearly Wonderworld later. And then the blip unhappens. Wait, the blip was when everyone disappeared. Was it the blip? No, the snap was when everyone disappeared. I think the blip was when people came back. I don't remember. But everyone comes back. Very, tons of Infinity War Endgame references you can throw around. But everyone blips back. And then Toma's like, I've been in Wonderworld, the new Wonderworld that I've created, writing stories, and you can see the saber sword in the Wonderworld. It's kind of cool. And I was happy with this ending, and then unfortunately Toma came back. Not necessarily because I disliked Toma, because I felt it was just one too many. But he gets to come back, I guess, but they show him in a scene with, like, the Force ghosts of everybody that found Wonderworld and Luna and the Megiddo, now kind of redeemed as Force ghosts or whatever. And they talk about, how he needs to go forth and continue to create good new stories. And, like, I thought this ending was satisfying. Cliche, but satisfying. And it makes sense for a story that's very much about fairy tales and happy endings and stuff. But I thought the perfect ending would have been Toma disappearing and just living in this new Wonderworld with Luna and helping to create the new stories for the new world. I think him coming back was one too far. I kind of wish it had been more of a bittersweet ending, because I do kind of miss, back when I first got into Toku stuff, Sentai was always the one that had the cookie cutter, put a bow on it ending. Rider would always have a weird ending, or an ending that was a little bit more bittersweet, or made you think, and now Rider always has cliche endings. And this wouldn't have been like a weird ending, or one that made you think, but I thought it would have been a nice bittersweet ending, and maybe make it so Toma could visit. Kind of like Gaims. Gaim had our protagonist go off to make a new planet, but he can visit for the team-ups, and he can visit. I would have been fine with that. I'm not, like, mad. I'm just disappointed that they went that route, because I feel it's a little bit predictable and too much of a happy ending. But that being said, I thought it was a nice ending. And like I said, there was a little bit muddled stuff, I think, with how the world came back. And I was a little disappointed that there was that whole, like, we write our own destiny stuff, which has been done a million times, but at least it's not the 500th Terminator storyline we did last year. If you think about it enough, and at least the way I interpret it, I do like it. And something I think the series was successful at was capitalizing on both their night themes and the storytelling themes. And I think that worked really well, talking about the meaning of stories and the idea of, instead of them changing destiny, it seemed like destiny did happen. Dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same. And that world did disappear, but because of the power of stories, they were able to create a new world and new stories. And it was a little cliche, maybe a little muddled, but I think it was very fitting, and I ultimately liked it, despite some nitpicks in terms of how the new stories came about. And I think that there was a really nice message in there about the power of stories and what they mean to people. Again, a little cliche, but I liked it. I would say overall this episode I would give a 4 out of 5. I thought it was a solid, predictable finale. Again, not as good as the last few weeks, and I kind of wish Toma had stayed in the new Wonder World. I think this made it a little bit too clean for me, but I still found it to be satisfying. Now, next week we have a bit of a weird epilogue that's going to tee up Revice, which I'm going to be honest, I'm going to review it, obviously. It might not be bad. I'm not a hater about it, but I find it to be wholly unnecessary. Primarily because we know Revice is coming. They already teased him in the movie. Can we just start Revice next week? Do we need this episode, really? Especially since Revice is supposed to take place in a world where writers are fiction. So I feel like, and there's also a human gear in the audience. I forgot to mention that. It's like, I just wish one time, can we just enjoy the story for what it is without cramming crossovers into it? Like, I know we've already crossed over and we're probably going to cross over in the future, but I just feel it's kind of unnecessary. We'll see how it plays out. And, we're probably going to get a bunch of Saber return specials, but at least with the way Saber ended, it's kind of open for return specials at some point. I feel like series like Build and Gaim didn't need it, and I'm still kind of low-key bothered that we did post-series stories we didn't need. But that's a story for another time. But I'm going to do a series review, but I'm going to wait until after next week's special episode just to be safe, just to sort of do an all-encompassing review. But what did you guys think of the finale? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notification for my videos. Awesome Rider, signing out.